Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where ye are. Welcome everyone to Journey to the Cloud 7.0. My name is Matthew Brown. I'm here with my host Dan Ray, and we're hosting the Journey to the Cloud webinar series, which deals with all things tech, certification, advice, and career advancement. So, welcome everyone. Um, Delighted to have you all here again. It's been a while since we've done this. I suppose our speakers tonight are going to be Dan Ray, MVP, Aaron Mitra, DevOps expert, Roma, Power Apps and MVP, and Henry Evans, Henry Evans, Junior Help Desk Analyst. So welcome to the speakers. Our judges tonight will be Frank Falvey, Matthew Brown, and Solomon Jeremiah, in the absence of Micah, who couldn't be here this evening. So welcome everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for having us, Matthew.
Thank you.
Great
So much.
person.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, all right, okay. So tonight we decided to mix it up a bit. We're going to have presentations from everyone, the four speakers, and none of us knew what we were going to be talking about. So it'll be interesting to hear all the different presentations. We're going to start with Henry. Henry, do you want to take the floor and present? And we'll
I'm
go
hoping
from
the
there.
technology works for me here. I have not used this before, so let's see if this works. Okay. Just to provide a rough outline.
Yeah, I can, Henry, work away.
Just to provide a rough outline, Matthew invited me to do this talk around about a week or two ago and said, talk about a few certifications, those being MS900, SC900, and PL900 in a creative way. So what I've tried to do is culminate all the information that I've learned across doing 4 of these certifications and really put an action guide together for people who, like myself a year ago, didn't really know much about IT or who may want to get into a job. So that's the whole idea of this presentation. It's a guide to somebody who may be new to this environment. I just want to sort of outline who I am as an individual. I've never done this before, so cut me some slack. My name is Henry Evans. I currently work as a service desk analyst. I work in the NHS, so I deal with a lot of first-line technical problems. So if somebody's having an issue with a piece of technology inside their business, it's realistically my job to help them out as best I can and meet service delivery targets and so on and so forth. That's a lot of what my role encompasses at the moment. As I've explained, I have achieved 4 out of the 8 Microsoft Fundamentals certifications. I have Azure Fundamentals, the Security Fundamentals, probably the favorite one so far. I've done Microsoft 365 Fundamentals, and around about 2 or 3 days ago, I passed the AI 900 Fundamentals course. Currently working towards Data Fundamentals 900 at the moment, the DP 900 one. And I really wanted to take this opportunity to, as I mentioned before, really outline to somebody who may be new to all of this exactly how to do it, because I don't want them to be in the position that I was in around about 6 months to a year ago, where I had to learn all this from scratch, with a little bit of help and support from mentors and my networking community that I value a lot. Just to provide an overview of my professional experience, I've worked in IT and by extension technical support and sales for around about 4 years. I've worked in a service desk analyst role for around about 4 or 5 months at this point. It's taken a lot to learn everything you need to learn for it. It's very full on, but I do enjoy it. And eventually I kind of want to go into cybersecurity and particularly making a move towards identity and access management at the moment. If you want to stay up to date with any future events, updates, things like that, things like this event as well, ordinarily I'll post it on LinkedIn. I've got a little QR code there as well. Just makes it nice and easy to get access to my profile and everything that I post at the moment. I'm hoping to try and build out a blog at some point down the road as well. Just some ways to give back to the community and to really put the knowledge that I've gained out there to help other people realistically. I've got a very simplistic agenda. It's going to be pretty full on. I've tried my best to simplify it as far as possible and to make it easy to read so that if people want to download it after the show, they can, and they can action these points as fast as possible. And I've got a few surprises in there as well, just to keep it nice and light. I'm going to go through what's called the certification cycle. This is a model that I have coined through doing 4 of these certifications. It really details all the different steps that are involved in achieving Microsoft Fundamental certifications, and by extension, preparing your mindset for the more complicated ones that will come down the road. I'm thinking associate, specialty, and those role-based expert certifications that come down the road. Before this presentation, around about 30 minutes beforehand, I took this model and applied it to a certification I'd never seen before. I applied it to Power Platform 900. Had never studied any of this. I've never touched it. I'm planning on passing and studying it in around about 2-3 weeks' time. So I will actually use this plan for that certification. However, I wanted to demonstrate its practicality and its ease of use for people that may not be in the environment where they look at this all the time, or they're just wanting to get used to IT. They're just familiarizing themselves with core concepts, things like that. There'll be an open Q&A at the end. This will provide an opportunity for people who may be watching this after the show to maybe get some of the burning questions that they have on their mind answered by the people who are in the show, or people who might be putting messages in chat, things like that. Realistically, and it's got a rather funny acronym, it's the certification cycle, or also known as the PRAT cycle. Now, it encompasses 5 different key steps, and all those key steps are pivotal in you not only being able to recall the content that is contained within Microsoft Fundamental Certification courses, but being able to understand it and critically implement it in different situations. It goes beyond perhaps what Microsoft require for their examinations, where it is a lot of memory retention of certain topics, features, things like that. That's what that preparation cycle is. It's about working out what your vision is as an individual. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Where do you think these certifications will take you? And then it's about breaking that down into action steps. Okay, which certifications do I need to do to get where I need to go? And then it's about breaking it down even further and focusing on individual certifications. Okay, if I know I need AZ 900, PL 900, PL 400, 600, so on and so forth to achieve what I want to achieve, let's start at AZ 900 and work our way up. And again, it's really coming to a point of, are you prepared to take action? Are you prepared to research this? Are you happy doing this? That research cycle really focuses in on a specific certification. It takes that one that you identified in the preparation stage and really focuses down on, okay, this is what I need to do. These are the requirements I need to know. I need to know this. I need to know that. This is how long it's going to take me to do it. And realistically, this is what I'm going to get out of it. Taking action, oftentimes people see as the most difficult part, but if you do preparation and research correctly, it is the easiest bit. Just sitting there, doing courses, actively taking notes, breaking them down based on the requirements analysis you did, and really just reminding yourself of the vision that you have overall is really, really important. And then the bit that some people don't like is the testing phase, making sure that you don't only sort of can identify certain topics, you can understand how they would be implemented in different situations. There are a lot of different resources and things like that I found that work really well and can really cement the knowledge that you need to know for these examinations, but also so you can take that knowledge forward so that you can take it into a workspace, so that you can apply it in an interview scenario. Because realistically, that's where these skills are going to be valuable, helping you get a job, helping you update your skills, and really giving back to the community as well. I think that's really, really important. And one thing that I really forgot about with the first maybe 2 or 3 certifications was taking a time out to treat myself. You're really at a point where you're trying to achieve something. You really should seek to get something out of it, not only the knowledge that you build, but also a nice separated thing from IT. I think it's very easy to get self-absorbed into all of this and to really dig down into, I need to do this, 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 and this, without maybe taking a step back, preventing that burnout, preventing you from wanting to walk away because you're doing too much all at once. And I think that's really important to talk about as we move on. Rightio, let's break down preparation. Sorry. Your vision in your role is really important. What role do you want to do in IT? Where do you want to go? What is it that you want to do? What vision do you have in mind for the future? And again, it's identifying those certifications. What certifications do you need to get where you want to go? There are different roles that Microsoft offer. There are different paths that they do based on the roles that you want to do, based on the different things that you want to achieve, based on the different positions you might want in your career and your lifestyle. Selecting the certifications becomes a very important stage as well. It's bringing that big picture down to very individualized steps. Okay, you've identified where you want to go, how you want to get there. but you're not going to get there if you don't break it down a little bit further and focus on the little bits and pieces as you go through. It's also about time investment as well. If you've never done a Microsoft certification before, there may not be any compass for this. There may not be any understanding or any idea about how long this might take. And you see this a lot on very introductory videos on things like Azure Fundamentals, where people are asking, well, how long is this going to take me? Realistically, I would say about 4 weeks is a good time frame for if you've never done an IT certification from Microsoft before, particularly their fundamentals. Breaking it down over 4 weeks gives you plenty of time to prepare yourself and to pass the examination. And the one bit of advice that I didn't take on the first exam and I've implemented all the way forward as we've gone through is booking the exam early. When you understand the time investment involved, getting that exam booked straight away gives you an accountability level. You are looking at the certification and saying, okay, I have to be ready by this date. Otherwise, I might forfeit the financial investment I've made in it. I might have to reschedule that examination. It will interfere with other things in my life. It really does keep you accountable to that. And really picking these certifications and working out the journey and identifying the pathway can be really, really simple with the Become Microsoft Certified document. They tend to update this once every month or two, and it goes into really, really good detail about all the different certifications they offer, because it can be a bit of a minefield on sometimes understanding how fundamentals transition to associate, transition to speciality, how it then transitions to expert, and trying to build an understanding how that works. It took me a little bit of time. And this document really helps cement that process, that understanding of how you move from one to the other and what the learning expectations are. Your research phase moves on from preparation. You've decided to set a certain certification. How do you actually go about doing it? It's a lot of common questions that you see. Requirement analysis is the first focal point. It is getting those exam objectives and really understanding what it is you need to know and what it is really that you need to understand. Your learning sources will focus on where you gain that information from. Where am I pulling this information? Is the information accurate? Is it catered towards the exam objectives? Is it making sure that I'm understanding what I would need to know for an entry-level role that focuses on the certification itself? You're talking about things like Microsoft Learn. That is absolutely the most critical resource I could recommend. It is tailored to exam objectives. That should be your first port of call. You've got external resources as well. Udemy is a particular favorite because they have a lot of different courses. Again, it's very important to be critically analytical of those courses just to make sure that they are covering the right things and that they're in date. And if your organization has an agreement with Microsoft through the Enterprise Skills Initiative, they have a lot of resources that you can attach to your work account. And I find that's been rather helpful for myself as well. You've got things like LinkedIn Learning and a few other different resources. Not that I've had much experience with them, but they are valid just the same. Time management and organizational tools. Again, this is, you understand the time investment that you need for this examination. You know how long it's probably going to take you. How do you break that down? How are you achieving those objectives in a timely fashion? How are you getting to the point where you're making steady progress? And what organizational tools are you doing to support that? It's very well and good making sure that you know what you need to do, how much time you need to invest into it, but where in your schedule does that fit? Do you have an hour break during your lunch that you can fit an hour study in? Do you have a 30-minute commute where you can stick a podcast on and start engaging with some of the content through audio? What different methods and means do you use to engage with that content? Do you prefer video? Do you like writing notes? Do you prefer listening to things? It's really about thinking about that. And this whole preparation and research process should realistically result in a study plan, an actionable, simple guide that you can say, okay, I know how to do this, 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 and this. And hopefully, 99% of the time, you will end up with the certification. You won't just end up with the certification, you'll end up understanding the content focused on so that you can apply it in practical scenarios. And that's really what this model focuses on. And it's what's helped me pass these examinations. This is a particularly useful instrument for the requirements analysis. Again, Microsoft have been overhauling a lot of their support examination documentation. This is all your skills measured, the different objectives for the examination, and the different things or very specific mediums that you need to focus on, and you need to understand how to practically apply these. I like to focus my notes around these. I'll create a header with a specific bullet point, and then I'll be able to understand, okay, I need to understand or describe what the shared responsibility model is, putting a description there and how I could apply it in a practical scenario. Then means if I forget it, when we talk about reinforcing our learning later on, I have a very quick resource that I can go back to without having to search through a Microsoft Learn course or maybe a video course that I've used to learn that content in the first place. I can appreciate this has been rather in-depth to begin with. So I wanted to take the load off a little bit for those that are maybe watching remotely or very, very quickly whizzing notes in a notepad or whatever the case may be, or maybe just be listening. I hope this was an appreciated little addition, but I thought I would take the opportunity to take a second or two out just so I can take a glass of water and so that we can continue with the rest of the model so that we understand how to practically apply it. For those that are wondering, the tabby cat is Fable and the other cat is Loki, the black and white one. They're my two cats I've had for about a year. Moving on though, if we move on to the action phase, so this is in the middle of the model. Okay, we've got a study plan. We know what it is we need to do. We know how to get there. We know how long it's going to take us. Is it realistic? Taking that moment for critical thinking and just saying, I tend to sleep on this moment, to be fair, to make sure that I know the plan that I've done in the evening is correct and it's right. Have I missed anything? Are there learning sources I can maybe take advantage of? So on and so forth. And really, this is the easy bit. You've done all the prep work. You've done the planning. Just keeping in mind that you focus on one course at a time. If you don't understand a certain topic or you're struggling to understand what's going on, absolutely integrate different courses into it for those specific things. But I found that focusing on one course specifically makes sure that you remain accountable to your learning objectives, and it makes sure that you understand it in a consistent fashion. You're learning it, particularly in Microsoft Learn course, you're learning it in order of the objectives most of the time. When you get to the end of that process, when you've reviewed 1, 2, 3, 4 courses, however many you think you need to pass, it's about reviewing that content, reviewing those notes, bringing them down to a point where you can stick them on maybe 2 or 3 pages, that you can go through that reinforcement process constantly through your written notes. It's also for that understanding element, and Microsoft Learn does a really good job of this through some of their courses. AI 900 in particular is a very good example of this, having practical opportunities to study the concepts that are discussed. For example, in MS 900, they talk about a lot of the M365 Admin Center. That can be a little bit inaccessible depending on your knowledge of the ecosystem itself. So creating a developer account, for example, gives you access to loads of different features associated with Microsoft. It gives you the opportunity to test identity concepts for like you would need to for SC900. It gives you a lot of opportunity to test M365 admin portal features and a lot of the different compliance and security aspects of Microsoft that would benefit your learning. Again, then you've got to think about how you share that. When you've got these 3, 4, 5 course certificates and you're passing these practice examinations, which we'll get to in a minute, at 80, 90%, how do you then share that with your network? How do you build your personal brand out? How do you get to a point where you're associating yourself with the hard work and effort you already put in? I think it's an important element in your process of building up your professional brand. It's very, very important. And I think it does get overlooked sometimes. I've overlooked it in the past. I think it's very much something that needs to be invested in. But taking baby steps at a time, trying different things, trying simple things, just to get you introduced into that space and really reaching out to people. Again, as I said before, that practical reinforcement learning is very, very important. This is a screenshot of the Azure portal. This is just the homepage, just to clarify. There is so many different things that you can see here that you can access, that you can get available. A lot of Azure services are free. There's a very long list of them that's available on Microsoft website. I would absolutely Google Microsoft Azure free services just so you understand what's going on. And again, this links into what certification I would recommend for individuals to begin with. And it absolutely has to be Azure Fundamentals, the AZ900. It links into so many other different things. And you can really start to develop out a niche purely by learning how this works. It's one of the best certifications that Microsoft offers. And it's definitely something that I would recommend to new people, especially myself a year ago, if I was going to do this again. Moving on to slide 12. This is the testing phase. This is the bit where myself, sometimes I get a little bit nervous with this bit because I want to make sure that I validated what I've learned and I know what I'm doing and that I understand the concepts. I can practically apply these. If my employer said tomorrow I need to learn how to do this, I can do it. That's realistically what I'm doing these certifications for. That links back into your vision and what role you want to do, as we explained at the beginning. Practice examinations come in many, many forms. Microsoft have on most of their certification pages, if not all of them, if memory serves me correct, they have around about 15 to 20 questions that reflect a lot of what you'll see in exams. They're not exact copies, but again, they are similar to what you'll see. and they're a good guideline of your performance. Just writing down after you've done courses what your grades are. If you're getting 15, 16, 17 out of 20, most times you'll be okay. It's about reviewing that performance, making sure that you are hitting those targets, making sure that you are getting above 70, 80%, and making sure you are achieving what you want to achieve. As we'll see in a minute, there was a practical example of this when I was studying for SC 900. If you're not hitting the mark, though, it's very, very important to go back to that research phase. It's very important to make sure that the learning sources you're using are valid, that you are taking effective notes, that you are following the requirement analysis that you did, that you looked at the exam objectives correctly, and that you're understanding what you need to study. And again, if it involves redoing specific courses, that reinforcement can sometimes make the difference. It might drive you a little bit crazy to watch the same course 2 or 3 times. I know it certainly does to me sometimes, but it's one of those things where if you want to reinforce and understand something, this is the best way to do it, through practical learning. And again, it's going on the Azure portal as well, trying those practical exercises and reinforcing what you've learned from Microsoft Learn and all the other learning sources we talked about before. And again, it goes down to the final exam as well. When you're ready, you need, well, I'll clarify, you don't need to take it. If you are learning this to understand these services and move on, that's absolutely valid and okay. You don't need to sit the examinations, as I've heard many, many times from examiners and people who deliver the courses for these particular subjects. But most of the time, people will want to do these to get the examination passed, to validate what they've learned. And I think once you've done everything else, this becomes a very easy process. Microsoft has an exam sandbox on their website. You can experiment with the different question types. There are experiments that you can do, and the sandbox is a really good environment to test that. I believe you just type in Microsoft Sandbox, you should be able to find it without any issues at all. This is the example I was talking about before. I was preparing for SC 900. I was in this testing phase at the end of the course, and I wanted to gauge what my studying was like, where I was hitting the required targets. Again, something to keep in mind, this was a Udemy one. This is not sort of officially sanctioned by Microsoft, but they do a very, very good job of these questions. They are fairly reflective of what you'll see. 20 questions, again, not really reflective, but the idea being is that you are understanding the core concepts, going back to requirement analysis, you're hitting the main target, your notes are effective, your practical learning has worked. And again, even if you get 90%, working out the areas that you didn't know and didn't understand, and maybe going back and reinforcing those things can be rather useful, because sometimes there may be that one exam question that gets you when you could have prepared for it a little bit better. If we move on to slide 14, this is a phase a lot of people forget about. It's about treating yourself after you put in a lot of hard work. You want to avoid burnout. This is something that I've personally experienced and that some of the individuals in this webinar have experienced as well from my interactions with people. Burnout can kill momentum. It really, really can. And giving yourself a break in between certifications so that you can rest, reset, and get yourself back in the mindset of learning is better than losing a week or 2 because you try to do 3 or 4 at once. It's about gamifying the rewards as well. You're achieving objectives. I try to liken this to video game objectives almost. You're achieving a certain target. How important is that target to your overall goals, your overall mission, and having a reward that's equitable to that goal? It's about that balance between strategic rewards and tactical rewards and goals. Is a super long-term goal that I've just hit? Well, I might reward myself with maybe an Apple Watch or a holiday or something to that effect. Is this a tactical reward that may not make a massive difference, but will contribute to my overall arching goals? Yeah, so I might go out for an evening with a couple of friends, I might go for a drink, I might buy a book, things like that. You've got to balance that between what you're trying to achieve. And it's about reflecting on that process as well. You set out to achieve a goal. Did the techniques you had work? Did they work out? Were there things you could have done better? Were there things that you learned about that benefited your job? Things like that, so that the next process can be more efficient, more streamlined, and eventually you can bring that time investment for the examination or for the course itself back down again. You start to understand things a lot quicker, and you get more momentum the more search you do, because you start to see topics crop up again and again and again, and it makes it a lot easier. It maintains that momentum. That's what we're looking for realistically when we're studying certifications. This was just an example of a reward that I had after AO 900. I went to the theatre with my partner, and it was a really nice way to take 2 days out, to have an evening out with people that I enjoy spending time with, and to make sure that I can now continue doing DP 900, which is the next one, without thinking I've done 5 certs before this that is burning me out at this point. It's very, very important, so I wouldn't underestimate this in the slightest. So how can you apply this model, or how can you be a pract effectively? As I mentioned to begin with, I had never seen Power Platform 900 before this talk. About 30 minutes beforehand, I sat here and applied this model in front of this computer to see if it worked. And realistically, based on my past experience, I was able to apply it well. A role that I would want to achieve out of Power Platform over the long term would be to be a Power Platform developer. I want to work in this ecosystem. I want to develop applications. I want to develop business solutions within Power Platform. Okay, well, let's work out what certifications I need. Well, Azure is going to be really important because of how well it links in with Power Platform. Power Platform fundamentals is going to be really important because you need to understand the foundations of Power Platform itself. And then how do you take that to the associate level and the expert level? And maybe what specialities do you want in between? That's where your PR 400 and 600 come in. It's about having a look at what your current expertise is. I've passed AZ 900 already. I've got that foundational knowledge. I don't have any other knowledge of Power Platform, so I'd be starting at PR 900. I want to understand how to get to that point and then move upwards to the associate and expert level certifications. Timeline is 2 weeks. Again, like I said, the more fundamental certifications you do, the easier it becomes. I've gotten it down from 4 to 2 just because I like to have that time period to understand the content. It gives me enough time during the schedule I have, the organizational tools I use, and the time remaining that I have during breaks, lunches, things like that, to practically understand most, if not all, of the exam objectives. You've got to think about peer review, booking the exam. Is there a training day you can go on? Is there maybe a free voucher you can get out of that? And what reward are you going to give yourself at the end? What goal is this representing? Is it tactical? Is it strategic? How is this contributing to, will this land me a job? Will this make that big difference? Or is this maybe a smaller stepping stone? That requirement analysis comes from the exam objectives, 110%. These should be your Bible for every fundamental cert. And again, structuring your notes out in respect to each of the little phrases and sentences that are there is really, really vital. You've got all your learning sources as well. Learn, an Azure subscription for practical learning. ESI, if your company has an ESI agreement or an Enterprise Skills Initiative agreement, absolutely leverage that. It is a fantastic platform. Udemy, to a lesser extent, but again, has some really good examinations and practice exams, as we've seen. And again, can you get a training day? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It just depends on when you decide to do it. But don't delay doing it just because there isn't one. You can do a lot of your studying yourself. Again, tactical goal setting, I'll use Google Calendar just to make sure I'm a week ahead, I'm keeping an eye on things, or 2 weeks ahead, I've got all the time scheduled in, I know what I'm doing. On an operational basis or a day-to-day basis, I know I have to have a little to-do list just to make sure I know what I'm doing, where things are going to go, how things integrate with my schedule, so on and so forth. Again, I've got to judge whether that study plan is realistic under the action phase. I've got to monitor my progress to make sure I'm making progress against my deadline and that I'm not falling behind, that I can actually pass the exam in 2 weeks. After each subject, I'm looking at reviewing content. I'm making sure that my content is aligning to those exam objectives and that I can't only recall them, but I can understand how they would apply in a business scenario, for example, because that's what employers will ultimately be looking for. If I do have any weaknesses or things that I don't really understand or I can't retain the knowledge of, I'm going to reinforce those weaknesses. I'm going to go back through those sources and watch those videos and drive myself onto in the process. And again, I'm going to share those experiences. I'm going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to share my reflections on this process. Eventually will have a blog at some point. I'm in the process of developing that. I would go on Twitter and maybe ask MVPs for support or people within my network of how they may have navigated these. It's all about that professional network. It's all about giving back, but also other people helping you out when you need help. It's a very reciprocal relationship from my own experience. Again, when you're testing yourself, practice examinations, Microsoft Learn is the golden standard for this. ESI, if you have it, they have a measure up practice examination that is very reflective of the exams. Again, not many people may have it depending on which company you work for. And then Udemy as well. Again, a practical example I showed you before that you can use to reinforce what you know. If you're getting 80% plus, that's the time you should think about taking the exam. You're hitting 10% above what they're going for. I like to clarify their questions and responses and examinations are weighted. So it's not a matter of just passing 70% of the questions. It's very much about understanding 70% of what you're going to get tested on. It's really, really important to understand. If you're not hitting 80%, go back to that research phase, research things. Are you hitting the objectives? Are your learning resources good? Are you doing the right things to achieve what you want to achieve? And then the final examination, are you at a point where you can do it earlier? Are you at a point where you need to push that back? Think about how that will interfere with other things in life as well. And think about holding yourself accountable to those things. If you're finding that holding yourself accountable to 2 weeks is not realistic, pull it back to 3. There's no harm. You're still going to do a better job if you give yourself the time to do this. And again, going back to that treating phase, that rewarding yourself, take a break after exam. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. I've had experience of burnout. It's not fun. Absolutely take a break. I tend to take a weekend over it. I'll do it on a Friday night or a Sunday night, and I'll take the first 2 days of the week off just to give myself a relaxing time period. Again, because this is a power platform's fundamental cert, it's not going to land me a job, but it's really going to contribute towards that career job, that me wanting to work as a power platform developer, for example. And I might buy a new book for that because it's a tactical reward. I'm not going to go on holiday for just passing one certification. It's very important to keep them grounded in what you're trying to do. And again, it's reflecting on that experience. What did you do well? What did you not do well? What learning sources worked well? And baking that into your critical analysis of learning sources back in the research phase when you do the next one. And then after those 2 days, you're going to restart the cycle again. You've had a break, you've had a reset, you're ready to get back into action, and you're ready to achieve the fundamentals to work towards your goals. And it prevents that burnout that can be very, very dangerous for people in IT that are required to certify themselves on a continuous basis from burning out and from having potentially negative mental health effects from that. I can totally appreciate that was very in-depth and quite explanatory and everything else. Does anybody have any sort of questions or anything about what I've discussed, or maybe more to the point, how to practically apply this in maybe their own situations that they're experiencing at the moment? If you're maybe sitting a fundamental set, for example. You're more than welcome to put questions in the chat, or if you want to just say them audibly, I'm more than happy to answer them. I'll take an open mic session, so to speak.
Thank you.